Friday afternoon, April 25th, and we're continuing to take testimony on S12. A couple narrow sections, I believe, unless we hear otherwise from the witnesses. So we're going to start with Jennifer Micah from General Counsel, Department of Children and Families. Are you there, Jennifer? There you are. So if you identify yourself for the record and proceed, thank you very much for being here this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Lalonde. My name is Jennifer Micah, and I'm General Counsel for the Vermont Department for Children and Families. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to pass this over to Lindsay Barron, who is actually going to be leading the testimony on this. She's in your room with you, and I'm here for any backup questions that you might have.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. Lindsay, why don't you join us? And thank you for being here. And if you could identify yourself for the record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lindsay Barron. I am the Director of Policy and Planning for the Family Services Division of DCF. This is my first time ever joining you.
Well, thank you for being here.
Did you notice how quick she threw the buckle in here, just threw it out to the wall?
No, not at all. We did have this planned.
Now, I assume that you're testifying specific. Do you have the bill in front of you, or do you have?
I don't have the bill in front of me, but I agree with your sentiment that our scope and view here is extremely narrow compared to what the larger bill is speaking to. I would say the history and the context as to, we've been following as bills have been taken up on the topic of sealing and expungement for several years now. And to clarify, not seeking any additional access to records that we don't already participate in through joint investigations. However, we're just seeking clarity that through the process of engaging in joint investigations with law enforcement, that those records that are jointly produced and created, that those are our records. So that's the 2-sentence brief statement that we had advocated on the Senate side to have added.
So, question: Are these records? Are any of them like court records or records that are sealed in other contexts or other places?
So pretty much from the moment a report comes in, we are commencing in partnership with law enforcement, and every activity of our investigation is happening hand in hand and in sync collaboratively with our law enforcement partners. And so we're creating the records together, I would say. And that's why we were seeking that clarity.
Okay, so these aren't records that go into the criminal justice system and might sometime down the road become sealed.
There are ultimately 2 paths that end up sort of coming from this. So on the law enforcement end, it could go down the process or the path of criminal charges, prosecution, and so on. Our role, as you've discussed, and I know as Michelle had provided the summary, ours is more of that civil process administrative. So we're using the information, and our side of, participating in the investigation is related to child safety matters, assessing for child safety. And ultimately, we have decisions through that process that we make related to whether one's name is placed on the Child Protection Registry. However, they're 2 very distinct processes.
So you're not asking to have an exception for use of sealed records. You're saying that the records that you have are not ones that are sealed.
Yes, correct.
I mean, they presumably are private within the context of
all of our records are confidential.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Are we going to let Lindsay off that easy in her first time here? It's like, go ahead, Barbara.
No, hi. So one question that I have, which is not on that section, and maybe you will say that DCF does not have a position on it, but for youthful offenders, we briefly were discussing yesterday whether those records would be expunged or sealed. And I don't know if DCF has any position on that.
I don't believe we've taken a position, but this is a question I might ask Jennifer Micah to chime in on.
Jennifer's going to check.
Yeah, we would need to talk internally about whether we had a position on that. I'm sorry, I don't think we can answer that today. If you want us to go back and talk to the client and see if we have a position on whether youthful offender records should be sealed or expunged. That's something that we would want to have our our adolescent services director weigh in on. Lindy Boudreau, who's been in front of your committee a few times, I think.
Okay, yeah, if you can get back to us to see if she wants to be weighing in on that, we'll get her scheduled. Probably not till the end of next week or the week following, I think is where we are, so.
Aren't you going to be out by then?
Pardon?
I said, aren't you going to be out by then? No.
Oh, if only. But no. From all signs. All right, thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. All right, so we will go to, who wants to start? John Gordon or Stuart?
I could jump in, Chair Lalonde, if
Okay, yeah, excellent. Go ahead. Go ahead. Identify
I'm
yourself.
certainly not the subject matter expert, and that's why John is here as the director of APS. But I think what I would just like to do is reiterate what was just stated, what Lindsay just said.
And before you go ahead, just identify yourself and your position, where you are from, and all that. For the record.
I apologize. It's been a while since I've been here. Stuart Scher, I'm the general counsel for the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living, also known as DALE.
Great.
And so I would just reiterate what Lindsay just said as with respect to not wanting to expand the department's access to records that we don't currently have, but simply to ensure that we have those and that they're designated as records of the department, so that in the event that they are ultimately sealed, those law enforcement records that we obtain concurrently with law enforcement through joint investigations, that they are preserved so that the department has access to those records for purposes of its administrative process through APS.
And so, all right, I think that probably is all we need to know, I think. But since you are here this afternoon, we should come up with some sort of question. Somebody come up with a question. I asked all the questions of the last witness, so.
I asked a question.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry. Of course, I apologize.
It sounds like the language reflects what they're hoping to achieve.
Yes, no, I think.
Yes, the language reflects what we are desiring. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I'm a new member, so I'm always a little nervous, but thank you.
All right, well, I mean, unless there's something more that does tell us why this language is here. And I do recall this from last biennium, but I don't recall that we actually managed to put it into the bill last biennium, but
Well, it
all right.
didn't matter, as it turned out.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much for being here as well. I don't think there's anything more on those two particular provisions.
Great. Well, thank you for your time.
All right.
Take care.
So we don't have our next witnesses scheduled till 2, but Nate is right now reaching out to try to get them here as soon as possible. They are just across the street, I think, so we should be able to get them here. Have you heard back?
I just emailed him like 3 minutes ago.
Let me see if I have.
Slots checked.
I thought there was going to be more to that. So let's go off live until